Seeing the paint strokes. Why is that so aesthetically pleasing over so many mediums of art? Take, for example, Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. We see the paint strokes in that in a more literal sense. Seeing the paint strokes lets the viewer get an insight on what direction the artist wanted to take the art. It's like letting somebody get a glimpse of the creative process, which the audience is always going to favor, which the audience is always going to resonate with. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to The Bread Show. Thank you for clicking on this video. Please hit that like button, that subscribe button. It really helped the channel out a lot. And let's get straight to it. Hope you enjoy. As some of the Bread Show OGs may know, I have an extreme love and passion for animation. If you look back on my channel, you may find some of my crude attempts at cell animation, or otherwise known as hand-drawn animation. Like this video where I found out about my inherent fear of heights. As somebody who's gone through the process, cell animation is quite the love letter to whatever story you're trying to portray to the audience. It's inherently a painstakingly slow process, albeit sped up by animation legends like Walt Disney, Joe Barbera, and Will Hanna. But still, having to draw frame by frame to convey any and all motion in a scene or in a show is a lobotomizingly slow process. That's why in some popular cell animated shows from, the early 2000s or before that, some of the character designs are pretty simplified. A pretty popular example of that is Masashi Kishimoto in Naruto Chapter 0. He draws out the goggles that, Naruto wears, and the way to simplify the animation process and the drawing process and the illustration process, he introduces the ninja headband, which is obviously a lot simpler to draw. Each second in animation takes 24 frames. So you can already see how popular animated films like Snow White or Akira are just amazing feats all in itself, just by the sheer length of them. Or it's just as easy to see how amazing it is to produce a show like The Simpsons. The creators of that show claim that 60 man-hours were put into 1 minute. That means it took 60 hours to produce 1 minute of The Simpsons, and it's been running for like 40 seasons. Albeit, 10 of those seasons, 15 of those seasons are probably, computer-based animation, but still, that's a lot of seasons, that's a lot of runtime, that's a lot of man-hours. A pretty popular claim gaining traction and making its rounds around media is that with the introduction of computer-based vector animation, sometimes animated media has lost a lot of its charm over the years. Not to mention the direction of AI art and, where that's eventually heading. Pair that with the upward high costs of animators and things like that. My biggest fear is that we're gonna lose a lot more soul and a lot more charm into what was, a beautiful art form. Now, it doesn't exactly take a venture capitalist to understand the benefits of computer-based vector animation that is used in Rick and Morty, new episodes of Family Guy, and The Simpsons. It's just, faster and more efficient. Why wouldn't you use it? But at the same time, it also doesn't take an esteemed caregiver to realize that the more time you put into something, the more opportunities you have to put more care into that same thing, which will be recognized by the audience, the project, and anybody else involved. That's why certain recent animated movies like The Fantastic Mr. Fox and most recently Spider-Man Across the SpiderVerse are odes to animation's meticulous nature. Much like speedrunning a video game or going for 100% completion, animating can be a painstakingly slow process that has a pretty small payout for the creator. Actually, what I feel is that it's so slow that it's almost therapeutic for the creator. Remember that animated movie that I alluded to earlier? Well, yeah, I spent about 3 months on that animated movie, and I say that because it wasn't the best movie. It was a very crude production, but at the same time, I understand that I spent months on that, and it's one of the videos that I'm most proud of because I understand how many hours went into that 3-minute project. What the animators and audio designers were able to do in Across the SpiderVerse and Into the SpiderVerse is beyond fantastic. I mean, this is Studio Ghibli levels of detail-oriented animation. I personally believe that Across the SpiderVerse proves that soul can be brought to computer-based animation, and that the era of soul in animation hasn't left with the hand-drawn, era. This movie was produced by Sony Pictures Animation Teams and Marvel Entertainment, and they took everything that they got right into the first movie and expanded on that into this one. According to the writers Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the film wanted to invert the dynamic of the Spider People by having Miles travel through different universes, showing off multiple art styles at the same time. In contrast with this movie, the universes came 2 miles in the last movie, which, created a much smaller sample size for those style of arts to be featured in Into the Spider-Verse when compared to Across the Spider-Verse. This time Miles sees so many different Spider-Men from different Spider-Man universes. There are Spider-Men from the Insomniac games. There are Spider-Men from animated TV shows that were canceled after they were aired or never left the design process. We even see the MCU Spider-Man in there. My boy Tom Holland, you know what I mean? Before even stepping into the theater for the first time, we could understand that there was going to be a lot packed into this movie in story-wise and animation-wise. We could tell that just by looking at the trailers, seeing Miles, traverse through different universes in those short time periods. Things were packed into that, and you had to be paying close attention to see everything. And to think that this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long. Now, to all my casual Marvel fans that have watched Infinity War and Endgame, you might say, well, this video is not that long. It's basically a short film to y'all. But in the animation universe, 2 hours and 20 minutes long at this quality consistently is extremely long. So long that it's the longest Western animated film of all time, with the longest of all time being Space Battleship Yamato, which was a Japanese anime that aired in 1983. And you might be familiar with some of these because there are some memes that have sprouted from this movie. It's a good movie, by the way. You should go check it out, no matter how long it is. And plus, it doesn't compare to superhero movie lengths of this day. Now, not for pocket watching purposes, but Into the Spider-Verse did really well into the box office, and it grossed $360 million. It's a movie highly favored by the public for its comic book style of animating, and it often mixed art and realism, usually favoring the art side. Joshua Beveridge is the head of character animation for this film, and that is interesting because he also worked on The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is the more realistic version of Spider-Man. 2 totally different experiences, all under one IP. One quote from an animator that stuck out to me is from Danny Dimian, and I'll read it to you real quick. He said, "If we do enough beautiful things wrong, it'll all feel right. We're not hiding the fact that there's paint strokes." Seeing the paint strokes, why is that so aesthetically pleasing over so many mediums of art? Take, for example, Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. We see the paint strokes in that in a more literal sense. Seeing the paint strokes lets the viewer get an insight on what direction the artist wanted to take the art. It's like letting somebody get a glimpse of the creative process, which the audience is always going to favor, which the audience is always going to resonate with. Van Gogh used this style in most of his art forms, taking the audience with him through a journey of still art, but at the same time, moving art. Not to compare Spider-Man Across the SpiderVerse to Vincent van Gogh, but you can see the similarities and parallels in their styles. When imitating comic books into an animated film, there are some conversion obstacles that might arise. For example, in comic books, frames are what generally direct the audience's attention to something that's happening on or off screen or off page, my bad. And for this conversion obstacle, there was no, right answer. So what the animators decided to do in Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse is to opt for abstract backgrounds to make everything in the foreground pop more. But then in the foreground, sometimes animators would opt for realism to make that thing pop in the foreground, causing attention to the main thing in the scene. It was this juxtaposition of abstract and realism that created such a unique dynamic for this Spider-Man film. And if you're more interested into this, then I would suggest looking up surrealist artists in the abstract art space because they deal with a lot of this type of stuff. And the style of which humans were animated in this film was even unique all in itself. They had low center of gravity with limbs that hung in the air. So yeah, this movie had so many different unique art styles in their animation. But the beautiful thing about art and animation is that it's just that, art and animation. It's silent. When conveying motion on screen, just as important as the art and animation is the audio design that fully immerses the audience into the story. In this instance, it could be the whipping of the webs or a punch hitting meaty flesh that's covered by, a layer of thick clothing or thin clothing. What a lot of people forget about animation production is that there are 0 natural sounds. There are 0 natural sounds that you would normally get in any other film production. The audio design team has to create every sound in that film, and that ventures far past the musical endeavor. Sound designers have to choose and create sounds that work seamlessly with whatever animation is on screen. They create sounds from scratch using creativity and resourcefulness. For example, food cooking on a frying pan, for example. That could be the sound of food cooking on the frying pan, or it could be the sound of heavy rain hitting the cold hard pavement outside. Or a balloon pop in an empty room could be used for the sound of a firearm. All to make the audience believe that Miles Morales is either traveling through dimensions or walking through the streets of Brooklyn, New York, as hypnotized by Biggie Smalls plays in the background. They found a way to make the colors loud and the sounds impactful, which is integral for any animated film, and they did it beautifully for 2 hours and 20 minutes with computer-based animation, showing how much soul can be delved into a computer-based animated project. The audio design team reportedly worked on this for 10 months. Just doing audio design. And like I alluded to before, making that art move was something simple, like a ball bouncing in a flip book, or an animal going throughout the air when it was hand-drawn animation. The beauties of computer-based animation and by extension CGI and everything, you can make almost anything you imagine move now. And yes, we all loved the shows as a kid that we could tell had love put into them with hand-drawn animation, but we can also tell that love can still be put into a show or a movie or any media that is computer-based vector animation, which is more efficient, but also allows just for more creativity and a bar rising up. And Spider-Man Across the SpiderVerse is that standard being raised, already being the longest Western animated film. It's already raising the standards, and it's the longest film at a very high quality being maintained throughout the whole way, with just high quality of a story being maintained throughout the whole way. So I'm excited to see how Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and movies like these usher in a new generation of animation. A new generation of animation that I am very excited to join in on. Like I said, I have a bunch of animations on my page, on my Instagram. Go check them out. I have the animated film. I'm looking to animate another film. It'll probably be hand-drawn animation because, that's the tools that I have right now. But I'm looking to improve on my last project. And there will definitely be more animations on the channel. I just took a little break because, I'm going through a lot of changes. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking to animate again. Animation is one of my, dreams and passions. I want to work on an animated film, one day, and hopefully my dream, my out of far dream, I'm sharing it with you guys, is that one day I do want to own my own animation studio, which, that would be amazing. But, starting off on the way, we're going to do some hand-drawn animations. We're going to be back with that. Kind of like the animation that I have on it used to be my intro, but then I kind of changed up my intro, but now it's my outro. So if you stay tuned to watch the outro, you'll see some of my animation. If you look back on my channel, you'll see some other of my animation. But yeah, thank you for watching this long. If you stayed this long, consider subscribing. I have a lot more content just like this. If you stayed this long, you might like the rest of my stuff. Welcome back to the Bread Show, but you're leaving the Bread Show. You don't have to really leave the Bread Show because there's a whole lot more Bread Show where that's coming from. And spread love, give inspiration in all you do, and peace out. He said, if we do enough beautiful things wrong, it'll all feel right. We're not hiding the fact that there's paint strokes.